Thank you. Lily. Were you the one who sent the rescue signal?
This is the largest land I've ever seen in my life.
Even in the darkest times, it's always safe to bet on human survival instinct.
We would like to know the truth.
Why are you so worried? I mean, our ultimate goal is to save Earth and the future of humanity.
Humanity's greatest and only hope for survival can be found in Mother Sphere.
This is my battle. Everyone, I'm sorry I couldn't do more to help. I'm so sorry.
Is it just me, or does every year seem to have its quote-unquote controversial game release that people argue over and try to boycott only for the game to be insanely successful? Last year it was Hogwarts Legacy, a game that ended up being the game that sold the most copies out of any other release that year. This year's pick is Stellar Blade, a game that started a huge discourse as soon as the first trailers came out, a discourse that has continued to this day and will continue in the future. You probably know what this discourse is about, but in case you somehow don't, let me fill you in. It's an incredibly complex and difficult to understand reason, and I'm fully aware that most of you probably won't understand what this means because it's so very complicated. The protagonist is a beautiful woman, and some people don't seem to like that. Yeah, what a controversy. I don't want to turn this video into a rant about how many Western studios and gamers treat their protagonist designs and their outlooks, but I think that when talking about Stellar Blade, it is unfortunately unavoidable. Of course, this has led to many people criticizing the game for absolutely idiotic reasons, as well as even going as far as boycotting it, which is absolutely wild to think about. And yeah, take a look at how badly the game's sales and review scores are doing because of these people. And in case you still don't know my take about this, well, the fact that I bought the game should already be enough to make my opinion clear. But enough about that, this video is about the game itself, so let's leave the dumbass controversies behind on Twitter and actually take a look at the game itself. If you watched my videos in the past, you probably know that I'm a huge fan of Souls-likes. I don't know if I can call Stellar Blade a full-blooded Souls-like, but it does share many elements and mechanics with Souls-like titles. Actually, I'd say it's closer to Sekiro than any other Souls game. The gameplay has a heavy focus on deflecting, but it also adds a lot of its own new stuff on top of it, so it for sure stands out. I was surprised to see how many different skills and abilities the combat has, not that all of them changed the gameplay heavily, but it was still nice to see. In addition to swinging your sword and deflecting the enemy attacks, you can for example switch to ranged mode, which is not always the ideal option, but the game has moments when using your drone gun thing is useful, and it fits nicely into the combat. So yeah, I think it goes without saying that the gameplay is definitely the highlight of Stellar Blade. I do have to mention, however, that it's probably the easiest Souls-like I've ever played in my life. I didn't die too many times on any of the bosses, and it honestly surprised me that I didn't get my ass handed over to me constantly. By no means do I think that every game needs to be super difficult, of course not. However, there's one thing that actually surprisingly annoyed me just a little bit. There are no penalties for dying. If you die, you just respawn on the last checkpoint and continue, when it's typical that in Souls-likes you lose your currency for example, or get some other kind of punishment for death. I didn't think I was going to miss this penalty. If you've played any Souls-like in the past, you know that it's always frustrating to lose your stuff when you die, but since that punishment was missing in Stellar Blade, I was never really afraid of dying. The fear of death and the need to find the next bonfire, grace or other kind of checkpoint is such an integral part of the Souls-like experience, so when that was suddenly missing, it felt a bit weird. But then again, I don't remember this game marketing itself as a full-blooded Souls-like, so I can't say it's really a complaint, or can I? Take that however you want. Hello everybody, this is me from the editing table. There's something that I forgot to add into the initial script of this video, but I really have to mention how great the soundtrack is. I don't know how I forgot to speak about that, but the soundtrack of Stellar Blade is indeed very stellar, and I just wanted to put it out there. Go listen to it. If you're playing the game, I hope you enjoy it. Let's get back to the video. I do have some real complaints though, but before we get into those, I want to talk about the performance. In this day and age, it's not unheard of that games release in an incomplete state. Actually, that sadly seems to be the norm. With Stellar Blade, no issues with performance. I played in the balance setting, that balances FPS and graphics, and I had absolutely no issues. The game is silky smooth 60 FPS for pretty much the entire runtime. The only tiny frame drops I had sometimes happened when the game was either loading a new area or when I opened one of these item boxes that throw out a million items on the ground simultaneously, but none of them affected my gameplay and they were barely noticeable. This is an excellent example of how games should be optimized. Take note, developers. Unfortunately, while Stellar Blade exceeds in the gameplay department, the story aspect is not very interesting. So the setting is a post-apocalyptic world that has been overtaken by alien-like creatures known as Naytibas, and the main character Eve and her friends try to reclaim Earth by fighting these aliens. It's a very simple plot, and yeah, it doesn't really evolve much past that. I'm not dumb enough to believe that this game was made with the story as a priority, but Souls games and Souls-likes usually feature interesting worlds to explore, even if the story itself wouldn't be too insane. And I'm not saying that the world of Stellar Blade doesn't look good. It looks great most of the time, but it's not something you haven't seen before. I don't want to dwell too much in the story section since I know full damn well that nobody's buying this game to experience a mind-blowingly good story, but I needed to put it out there. That's all I can really complain about. Stellar Blade is a very solid video game. It for sure doesn't push any boundaries, but it's more than enough to deliver a fun and enjoyable experience for fans of Souls-likes.